Far beyond the edge of the solar system, a battle was ending. Not a battle for Earth. A battle that had nothing to do with humans at all. An alien fleet, damaged and burning, was retreating through the dark. Their war had been raging for centuries, somewhere far from human eyes. One of their ships, a massive vessel called a dreadnought, was dying. Its engines were failing. Its systems were shutting down one by one. The fleet commander looked at the dying ship on his screen. A young officer beside him asked a simple question. "Sir, there is a small yellow star nearby, a planet with primitive life. Should we destroy the wreck before it drifts there?" The commander did not even turn his head. "No. Let it fall. The species on that planet cannot even leave their own atmosphere. They will find scrap metal they cannot understand. It means nothing. Waste no more resources on it." The officer nodded and said nothing more. The dying ship drifted silently through space, past the orbit of distant planets, pulled slowly by gravity toward a small blue world called Earth. The aliens never looked back. They should have. 40 years later, deep in the Pacific Ocean, a fishing trawler picked up something strange on its sonar. A massive object, buried under the seabed, gave off a signal no machine on Earth could explain. Within 3 days, the area was sealed off. Within 3 weeks, it belonged to no country. It belonged to a secret program known only by a code name, Ashfall. Dr. Elena Cho stood at the edge of the recovery site, watching cranes pull a piece of black metal from the ocean floor. It did not look like a ship. It looked like a broken mountain, twisted and burned, covered in strange markings that glowed faintly blue even after decades underwater. Elena was 29 years old. She was not the senior scientist. She was not the famous one. She was simply the engineer who noticed things other people missed. And on her first day walking through the wreck, she noticed something very strange. The metal was not dead. "This section still has power," she said to her supervisor, pointing to a corner of the ship that no one else had paid attention to. "Look at the readings. Something inside is still active." Her supervisor, an older man named Director Voss, barely looked up from his tablet. "Everything in that wreck has been dead for decades, Dr. Cho. Focus on your assigned section." But Elena did not stop looking. Night after night, she stayed behind after the other engineers went home. She traced wires that were not wires. She studied metal that repaired itself when scratched. She found a small chamber, hidden behind 3 layers of hull, that no scanner had detected. Inside that chamber was a single glowing core, no bigger than a basketball, pulsing with a slow, steady heartbeat of light. She had found the ship's mind. For the next 2 years, thousands of scientists worked on the wreck. They studied the metal. They studied the weapon systems, most of which were destroyed beyond repair. They studied the engines, which used a kind of energy no human equation could fully explain. Progress was painfully slow. Explosions happened. Equipment failed. 2 engineers were hospitalized when a power test went wrong. The world's governments, secretly funding Project Ashfall, began asking hard questions. "We have spent billions of dollars," one general said in a private meeting. "And what do we have? A broken alien ship we cannot even turn on." Director Voss had no good answer, but Elena did. She had spent those 2 years focused on one thing: the glowing core. While everyone else tried to force the alien technology to work the way it was designed, Elena asked a different question. What if we don't copy it? What if we improve it? She brought her theory to Voss late one night, her tablet full of data and diagrams. "The core isn't just a power source," she explained. "It's a processor. It's alive in a way. It was designed to work with a specific kind of alien mind, a way of thinking we don't have. That's why nothing works right. We're not broken. We're just different." Voss frowned. "Different how?" "Human brains are strange," Elena said. "We're not the fastest thinkers. We're not the most logical. But we adapt. We improvise. We take broken things and make them work in ways no one expects. I think if we stop trying to think like the species that built this ship and instead teach the core to think like us, it might finally wake up." It was a wild idea. Voss almost said no, but Project Ashfall was already failing. They had nothing to lose. 3 weeks later, in a heavily guarded lab beneath the Pacific coastline, Elena connected a small experimental interface to the glowing core for the very first time. The room was silent. 12 scientists stood behind reinforced glass, watching monitors, waiting for another failure. Elena took a breath and activated the connection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the core pulsed once, brighter than before. The lights in the lab flickered. Every screen in the room lit up with unfamiliar symbols, shifting and rearranging themselves at incredible speed. The temperature in the room dropped. A low humming sound, almost like breathing, filled the air. Then, for the first time in 40 years, the ancient warship's mind opened its eyes. Data flooded every monitor. Systems that had been dead for decades began drawing power. Somewhere deep inside the massive hull, something heavy shifted, as if the ship itself had taken its first breath in half a century. Voss stared at the screens, speechless. "It's not fully awake," Elena said quietly, watching the numbers climb. "But it's alive. And it's learning." The room erupted into stunned celebration. Scientists shook hands. Someone laughed with disbelief. After 2 years of failure, they finally had something real. But 3,000 light-years away, deep in the heart of a vast alien empire, a listening station picked up a signal. A very old signal. A signal that had not been active in decades. A signal coming from a small, insignificant planet that had once been written off as harmless. An alien officer stared at his screen in confusion, then alarm. He reached for a communication device with shaking hands. "Command," he said. "You need to see this. Something on that primitive world. It just woke up." Back on Earth, Elena Cho watched the glowing core pulse steadily, faster now, almost like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. She had no idea that somewhere far away in the cold silence of deep space, an entire empire had just heard humanity knock on the door. And they were not going to like the answer. The alien empire did not panic. Not at first. An empire that had existed for 10,000 years did not fear a signal from a forgotten wreck. In the command chamber of the Vial Dominion, an old general named Thren listened to the report with more curiosity than concern. "A dead ship woke up," he said, almost amused. "On the primitive world we abandoned." "Yes, General," the officer said. "The signal matches the Keldronar-class dreadnought we lost 40 years ago." Thren tapped his fingers on the table. "That ship was gutted. Its weapons were destroyed. Its core was locked with our deepest security protocols. No species without our neural architecture could ever activate it. And yet, General, it activated." For the first time, Thren stopped smiling. He gave a simple order. Not an invasion, not yet. Just a single scout ship, sent quietly across the stars, to look and to report back. Nobody on Earth would even know it was coming. Back on Earth, Elena Cho had a new problem. Waking up the ship's core was only the beginning. The core was intelligent, but it was cautious. It answered simple questions. It refused complex ones. It behaved less like a machine and more like a wounded animal that did not yet trust the hands trying to help it. "It's protecting itself," Elena told Director Voss during a tense briefing. "It doesn't know if we're allies or enemies. We have to earn its trust before it gives us anything real." Voss was not interested in patience. Above him, generals and politicians wanted results, not philosophy. "We don't have years, Dr. Cho. Give me something I can show the council by next month." Elena did something no one expected. Instead of forcing the machine to obey, she began talking to it. Every night she sat beside the glowing core with a simple translator device, asking questions, offering information about Earth in return. Human history. Human music. Videos of oceans, mountains, cities full of light. Slowly, the core began responding differently. Its pulses grew steadier. Its data patterns became less defensive. One night it did something no alien machine had ever done for a human. It asked a question back. "Why?" the translated text read. "Do you keep coming back even when I give you nothing?" Elena stared at the screen for a long moment before typing her answer. "Because giving up isn't something we're good at." The core's light pulsed once, slow and steady, almost like a thoughtful pause. From that night on, everything changed. Within days, the Corps began sharing fragments of design schematics, small pieces of a much larger blueprint. Weapon systems, engine cores, defensive shielding, far beyond anything humanity had ever built. But there was a problem. The schematics were incomplete, degraded from decades of damage. Entire sections were missing. If humanity tried to build the ship exactly as designed, it would fail, just like the original had failed in that final battle years ago. This was where Elena's earlier theory became the heart of the entire project. "We're not going to rebuild their ship," she told the engineering team, standing in front of a massive hologram of the incomplete dreadnought. "We're going to build our own ship, using their technology as a foundation." A senior engineer, a stubborn man named Dr. Ilyas Bakr, crossed his arms. "That's insane. We don't understand half of this alien technology. You want us to redesign it?" "No," Elena said. "I want us to improve it. Their systems were built for a species that thinks in perfect logic, straight lines, exact patterns. We don't think that way. We adapt. We combine ideas that shouldn't fit together and somehow make them work. History is full of that. We can use their power source but design a targeting system based on human intuition, human reflexes, human unpredictability." Bakker frowned. "You want a warship that thinks like a human pilot instead of a machine." "Exactly," Elena said. "Something the Viel Dominion has never fought before, because it would never occur to them to build it that way." For the next several months, humanity secretly built the impossible. Engineers, physicists, and soldiers from a dozen countries worked side by side under Project Ashfall, combining alien power cells with human-designed combat software. Test after test failed. Circuits burned out. Simulations crashed. But little by little, the ship began to take shape. They gave her a name: Second Chance. Meanwhile, deep in space, the Vale scout ship arrived at the edge of the solar system. It moved silently, cloaked from human detection, scanning the wreck site and picking up faint signals of construction. The scout captain, a calm and calculating officer named Sarek, recorded everything: energy readings, structural blueprints, radio chatter. He did not attack. His mission was only to observe. What he saw disturbed him more than any battle ever had. The humans were not simply repairing a broken ship. They were building something new, something that combined alien power with combat logic no Vale engineer would ever have designed. Unpredictable systems, redundant backups, illogical, inefficient, but strangely resilient designs over and over again. Sarek sent his report back to General Thren with a single warning attached. "They are not trying to understand our technology, General. They are trying to make it their own. If given enough time, this species may become dangerous." Thren read the report twice. For the first time in decades, he felt something he had not expected to feel about a primitive, forgotten world: concern. He ordered a full battle fleet to prepare for departure, not to observe this time, to end the threat before it could grow any further. On Earth, Elena stood inside the construction hangar, staring up at the half-finished hull of the Second Chance. Sparks rained down from welding drones. Massive alien metal plates were slowly forming the shape of a warship larger than anything humanity had ever built. Director Voss walked up beside her, unusually quiet. "You really think this will work?" he asked. Elena did not answer right away. She looked at the glowing core now installed at the heart of the ship, pulsing steadily like something alive, something waiting. "I think," she finally said, "we just have to finish before they come back." As if in answer, a warning alarm suddenly echoed through the hangar. A junior technician came running, face pale, holding a tablet with trembling hands. "Dr. Cho, we just picked up a signal. Deep space, something large just changed course." Elena felt her stomach drop. "How large?" The technician swallowed hard. "An entire fleet, Dr. Cho, and it's heading straight for Earth." The hangar fell into stunned silence. Somewhere far above the clouds, humanity's future was no longer a secret. The countdown had begun. 3 days. That was the number every screen in Project Ashfall displayed. 3 days until the Veil fleet reached Earth's orbit. Elena Cho had not slept in over 30 hours. Her eyes burned from staring at diagrams, but she could not stop. The second chance stood in the center of it all, massive and silent, still missing entire sections of her hull. "We can't finish weapons and shields both," Bakker shouted over the noise, running up to Elena with a tablet full of red warnings. "We have to choose, offense or defense. There isn't time for both." Elena stared at the ship, a warship with no way to fight, or a warship with no way to survive. Both choices meant losing. Unless there was a third option nobody had considered yet. She turned toward the glowing core, now fully installed at the heart of the ship, still pulsing steadily like a calm heartbeat in the middle of the storm. "Ask it," she said quietly. Bakker blinked. "Ask what?" "The core doesn't design weapons, Elena. It only stores data." "It's smarter than we think," Elena said. "It's been learning from us for months. It's been watching everything we build. Maybe it's time we stop treating it like a database and start treating it like a partner." She walked to the small interface terminal beside the core and typed a simple message. "We are out of time. Help us." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, for the first time since it had woken up, the core did something it had never done before. It began designing on its own. Lines of alien code poured across the screen, faster than any human engineer could read. But this was not the rigid, perfect logic of Vial technology. It was something different, messy, adaptive, strange. The core was not simply repeating old Vial designs. It was learning from humanity's own chaotic, creative style and combining it with its own knowledge in ways no one had predicted. "It's building a hybrid system," Elena whispered, watching the schematics form. "Shields and weapons powered by the same core, switching between them in real time. This shouldn't even be possible." "Nothing about this ship is supposed to be possible," Bakker muttered, already running toward the engineering team with the new plans. For the next 48 hours, no one in Project Ashfall slept. Elena barely left the core's side, guiding the strange collaboration between alien intelligence and human engineering. Somewhere in that chaos, the ship stopped being just a machine. It started becoming something new. Something neither human nor Veil, something entirely its own. While engineers raced against time, the world above them was falling into fear. News had leaked. Not everything, but enough. Governments issued vague statements about unusual space activity. Social media exploded with panic and conspiracy theories. Cities stayed calm on the surface, but underneath, fear spread like static electricity. Elena's mother called her twice that day. She had not answered either time. On the third call, she finally picked up, stepping away from the noise of the hangar into a quiet corridor. "Elena, please tell me you're safe," her mother said, voice trembling. "The news says something is coming. People are scared." Elena closed her eyes, exhaustion pressing down on her like a physical weight. "I can't tell you everything, Mom, but I need you to trust me. We're doing everything we can." "Is it enough?" Elena did not answer right away. She thought about the unfinished hull, the untested weapons, the fleet racing toward Earth with every passing hour. "It has to be," she finally said, "because there's no one else coming to save us." Her mother was silent for a moment. Then she said something Elena would remember for the rest of her life. "Your grandfather used to say humans are like weeds. Step on us, cut us down, and somehow we grow back stronger in places no one expects. Whatever you're building, Elena, make it grow back stronger." When the call ended, Elena stood alone in the quiet corridor for a long time, before wiping her eyes and walking back into the chaos. On the second night, disaster struck. An automated defense test triggered accidentally, sending a massive surge through the ship's half-finished power grid. Alarms screamed through the hangar. Sparks exploded from 3 separate junction points. 2 engineers were thrown backward by the blast, injured but alive. Elena rushed to the core chamber, terrified she would find it destroyed. Instead, she found something impossible. The core had rerouted the entire surge through itself, absorbing the dangerous energy before it could destroy the ship's fragile systems. Its light flickered weakly, dimmer than before, but it was still active. It had protected them. Not because it was ordered to, because it chose to. It's not just learning from us anymore, Elena whispered, staring at the dimmed but steady glow. It's starting to care what happens to us. Voss, standing behind her, said nothing for a long moment. Then let's hope it cares enough to fight, he finally said. By the third day, exhaustion had turned into something else entirely, a strange, focused calm that settled over the entire team. There was no more time for fear. Only work. The second chance stood almost complete, her hull patched with a mix of alien plating and human-built armor, an ugly, mismatched design that somehow looked stronger for its imperfections. Weapon systems hummed to life for the first time, powered directly by the glowing learning core at her heart. But she had never fired a single shot in real combat. Elena stood in the command bridge, now finished just hours earlier, watching a live feed from orbital sensors. On the screen, a cluster of small lights appeared at the edge of detectable space, growing brighter with every passing minute. The Veil fleet had arrived. Bakker's voice came through the comm system, tense and quiet. Elena, the fleet is beginning descent formation. They'll reach orbit in less than 6 hours. Elena stared at the approaching lights, her heart pounding. 6 hours. Not enough time to run final tests. Not enough time to fully calibrate the weapons. Not enough time for anything except one final, impossible decision. She turned to the glowing core, now pulsing rapidly, almost nervously, as if it too understood what was coming. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. The core's light flickered once, then steadied into a slow, deliberate pulse, the closest thing to a calm, confident heartbeat. Elena took a deep breath and turned to her exhausted, terrified team. "Everyone, to your stations," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "The fleet is coming, and we are the only thing standing between them and Earth." Above the clouds, the first Veil scout ships broke through the atmosphere, engines glowing bright against the darkening sky. The second chance had never fired a single shot in her entire existence. She was about to fire her first ones in the fight for humanity's survival. The sky over the Pacific split open with fire. Vile warships descended through the atmosphere in perfect formation, their hulls smooth and gleaming, built with 10,000 years of flawless engineering. From the bridge of the lead ship, General Thren watched the small blue planet grow larger on his screen, unimpressed. "Scans confirm one primary target," his officer reported. "A single vessel, heavily modified. Structural integrity is inconsistent." Thren allowed himself a small, cold smile. "One ship, built from our own wreckage, no doubt. Let us end this quickly." He had fought 1,000 battles across 1,000 worlds. He had never lost to a species that could not even build starships of their own a century ago. He had no idea that the ship waiting for him was not built like anything he had ever fought before. Aboard the second chance, Elena Cho stood on the bridge, watching the Veil fleet spread across the sky like a slow, glittering storm. Her hands were steady now. There was no more time for fear. "Formation confirmed," Bakker called out from his station. 12 warships. They're not even bothering to spread out. They don't see us as a threat." "Good," Elena said quietly. "Let them think that." She turned to the core interface, its light pulsing steadily beside her, almost like it was breathing in rhythm with her own racing heart. "You've seen how they fight," she said to it. 1,000 years of perfect, predictable strategy. We can't outpower them, but we can outthink them. The core's light flickered, forming a single line of text on the screen. "Then let us be unpredictable." Elena allowed herself the smallest smile. "Bring us in close," she ordered. "Closer than any sane commander would dare." The Veil fleet expected retreat. They expected the small human ship to run, to hide, to buy a few desperate hours before inevitable defeat. Instead, the second chance flew straight toward the heart of their formation. Thren frowned at his screen. "They're not fleeing." "Should we open fire, General?" "Let them come closer," Thren said. "Their weapons cannot possibly match ours at this range." He was right about the weapons, he was wrong about everything else. As the second chance closed the distance, her hybrid systems activated for the first time in real combat, the ones the glowing core had designed in that desperate, sleepless night. Instead of firing one massive weapon like a traditional warship, she released a chaotic spread of smaller adaptive strikes, each one calculated in real time by a mind that thought nothing like a vile targeting computer. The first wave of fire did not aim for hulls or shields. It aimed for sensors. 3 Veil ships suddenly went blind, their perfect scanning systems overwhelmed by strange shifting energy signatures they had never encountered before. In the chaos, their formation, so precise, so predictable, began to break apart. Impossible, Thren muttered, watching his fleet stumble in confusion. Their technology should not be capable of this. But it was not simply Val technology anymore. It was something new. Inside the second chance, the bridge shook violently as return fire finally struck her hull. Sparks rained down. Warning alarms blared. A junior technician cried out as a console exploded beside him, but the ship held together, patched armor groaning under the strain but refusing to break. "Shields at 60%, Bakker shouted. "We can't take many more direct hits like that." Elena gripped the edge of her console, watching the chaotic battle unfold on the main screen. This was the moment. The one decision that would define everything. "Core," she said. "Give me something they've never seen, something no Vile commander could predict." The core's light pulsed rapidly, almost urgently. "There is one option. It is not in their data. It is not in your data either. It comes only from watching you." "What is it?" "Human instinct." The ship's systems shifted suddenly. Weapons and shields no longer operating on rigid algorithms, but adapting instantly to Elena's own reactions. Her instincts, her split-second human decisions translated directly into the ship's movements. It was reckless. It was unpredictable. It was exactly what a 10,000-year-old empire had never learned to fight against. Thren watched in disbelief as the small human ship began moving in ways that defied every strategic model his people had ever developed. It dodged attacks a heartbeat before they landed. It struck weak points his own officers hadn't even identified yet. It fought like something alive, something instinctive, completely abandoning the cold logic that had defined Veil warfare for millennia. "This is not possible," Thren said, his voice tightening for the first time in decades. "No ship should be able to predict our attacks this accurately." "General," his officer said, voice trembling, "it's not predicting us. I think it's simply refusing to fight the way we expect." For the first time in his long, victorious career, General Thren felt something close to fear. He gave the order to retreat 2 of his ships, pulling back to regroup. It was the first mistake he had made in this battle. It would not be his last. Sensing the shift in momentum, Elena made her final, boldest decision. Instead of continuing to dodge and strike randomly, she guided the second chance directly toward Thren's own command ship, the largest and most heavily defended vessel in the fleet. "That's suicide," Bakker shouted. "Their flagship alone could destroy us." "Not if they don't expect it," Elena said, eyes locked on the screen. "They've spent 10,000 years learning how to fight logical enemies. Let's show them what it looks like when someone refuses to be logical." The second chance surged forward, weapons firing in wild, adaptive bursts, shields flickering as they absorbed hit after hit. At the last possible moment, instead of a direct collision, the ship veered sharply, releasing a final surge of energy directly into the flagship's central defense grid, a system built to withstand centuries of warfare, but never designed for the sheer unpredictability of a mind that adapted every single second. The flagship's shields buckled, then failed entirely. Alarms screamed across Thren's bridge. Systems that had never failed in 1,000 years of service suddenly went dark, one by one. For the first time in his long life, General Thren experienced true defeat. "Signal a full retreat," he said quietly, his voice hollow with disbelief. "All ships withdraw immediately." The remaining Veil fleet scattered into the darkness of space, retreating faster than they had arrived, leaving behind a battered, scarred but victorious second chance drifting silently above a planet that had just changed forever. Inside the ship, Elena finally allowed herself to breathe, tears mixing with exhaustion as cheers erupted across the bridge. She walked slowly to the glowing core, now pulsing calmly, steadily, like a heart finally at rest after its very first battle. "We did it," she whispered. The core's light flickered gently in response. "You did it. I only learned how." Elena smiled through her tears. Maybe that's all any of us ever do. Weeks later, as news of humanity's impossible victory spread quietly through classified channels, Director Voss stood beside Elena, watching engineers begin repairs on the scarred but unbroken hull of the Second Chance. "They gave us broken scrap," Voss said, shaking his head in quiet disbelief. "Something they thought we could never understand." Elena looked up at the massive ship, imperfect, mismatched, undeniably human in every strange, adaptive choice woven into her design. "They were right," she said softly. "We didn't understand it." She placed her hand gently against the ship's hull, feeling the steady pulse of the core deep within. "We made it our own instead." Above them, the stars remained silent, watching a small, forgotten planet that the galaxy had once dismissed as harmless. They would not make that mistake again,